One of the arts of competitive lifting is in the attempt selection, because strange though it may seem, the strongest lifter doesn't always win the meet. I myself have won national medals where I know I've not been one of the strongest lifters there, but I've maximised what I've been able to do on the day and they haven't, and I've been able to pick them to that podium place. So what I thought I'd do was talk about my competition just gone by, talk about my attempt selection, talk about the planning process from start to finish, and how I went about trying to maximise my output on the day and give myself the best opportunity to have the most positive day possible. Good attempt selection is all about building momentum, whether that's you building towards a big competitive total or you're just securing the easy wins to get confidence on the platform. It can transform an otherwise really disappointing day into a really positive one if it's handled appropriately. And just remember that it's always about where you finish rather than where you start. It also needs to be handled in the context of your program and your goals and your priorities. So as I mentioned in the previous video, my goals for this comp were a 200 kilo squat, also a 115 bench and a 250 deadlift. The one thing that I really wanted from this comp was a 250 deadlift. And if I'm going to prepare myself for that big 9th attempt on the platform, then the planning for that needs to start with appropriately handling the first 2 lifts. You don't want to have any crazy grinds that are going to leave you with an empty gas tank and nothing to give for your final deadlift. This means if I want to hit a 200 kilo squat and have plenty left in the tank for a big 3rd deadlift, I need to be programming myself and preparing myself to come into the competition as a 202 or 205 kilo squatting standard. I need to be hitting markers in the gym that make me think that that's the case before that plan becomes realistic within the context of my prioritised goals. It's really important to have a range in your mind of what can constitute a successful day. You can't put all of your eggs into one basket going 9 for 9 with PBs across the board because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So while I really wanted the 200 kilo squat, having done 197 in the gym, I'd only done 192 on the platform. I track those 2 PBs separately because the execution is so different, and it means that I can secure an easy win, take 195 on my 2nd attempt, and that means that even if I miss the 200 kilo squat, I've got something positive that I can take from today. I've got hard progress that I can show in terms of tracking my PBs. While that jump from 2nd to 3rd is slightly smaller than I would normally like to take, my plan was to be conservative anyway, and as it turned out, that was exactly the case, and 200 moved as well as I could have possibly hoped for. Bench, I find, by a wide margin, sees the most unsuccessful lifts in competition. But in my opinion, it's the easiest one to plan for, so long as you appreciate the nature of the lift. So while the other 2 lifts obviously tend to go downhill as things get heavier, bench tends to fall off a cliff. What that means is your 2nd attempt might look really good, but it still might not be enough for you to make the big jump for your 3rd that you might want to make. So another piece of advice is if you're trying to build a total and you've got a couple of kilos floating around that you need to find from somewhere, generally you don't want to try and put them on your bench. If you want to put them on your 3rd deadlift and you can willpower an extra couple of kilos out, typically that just doesn't work so well for bench. For me, my bench was much the same as my squat in the sense that I'd done 112 in the gym, but only 107 on the platform. So taking a 110 2nd attempt secures that easy win, and if 115 is there on the day, then great. As it turns out, I didn't do any upper body training for about a month leading into competition because of a niggling shoulder injury. So I was either going to go the more conservative route and just finish on 110 or just open up at 25. As it happens, I handled the shoulder injury fairly well and it felt pretty good in the day, so I just stayed with my conservative plan. I pressed 110, which is a comp PB, and it moved really well, so I've got a lot of positivity moving forward. It's also the 7th comp in a row now where I've gone 3 for 3 on bench, all with PBs every time, so that's something that I want to maintain. This training cycle for deadlift has probably been the best training cycle of any lift I've ever had. Rep PBs have come really easily, my strength has felt like significantly improved. It felt like 250 was going to be conservative on the day just based on a lot of my markers. And all this just goes to show you can never fully predict or guarantee anything in powerlifting. The plan so far had gone perfectly. My squat and my bench hadn't fatigued me too much, and unusually for me, my warm-ups and my first and second attempt moved better than I could have possibly expected. So I thought I was perfectly set up for that big 250 attempt that I wanted from the get-go. As it turned out, it just wasn't there on the day, and whether that comes down to conditioning, maybe some technical stuff. It's the first program that I've run for a while that doesn't have squat and deadlift on the same day, at least one of those days in the week. Maybe that's partly why deadlift went so well this training cycle. Lots of things to consider moving forward. But in terms of on the day, disappointing not to get it. It was the one lift I was particularly confident of hitting out of the three. And it was the one that I particularly wanted, so it's a shame it got away. But I knew that with 240, even if I'd gone on the lower end of what I wanted for the other two lifts, hitting the 240 on my second still secured me a total PB. So while it wasn't the priority, again, I'm just looking at these small wins that I can take that set me up for more successes down the road. So while my decision making is going to be different from your decision making, our plans are going to be different. Hopefully there's some analogous situations here that have provided you just a little bit of context, a little bit of guidance in terms of the thought processes that need to go on, as I say, to maximize the opportunity to have a really successful day. Your attempt selection needs to be based on the context of your program and your goals. But it also needs to factor in other things like your physiology. How well can you handle high percentage weights? What jumps are you comfortable making? As well as this, what is your psychology like? How are you going to handle if you miss a lift? Are you okay taking a big risky third? Can you move past it and do well in the other two lifts? A general piece of advice in that regard is that if a lift hasn't gone your way early on, so say you miss your third squat or you miss your opening bench and it flusters you, don't try and make up for it in the other lifts. If anything, just pull back a little bit, secure the easy wins, and try not to compound any errors that you're going to make. Because errors are going to be made. It's a sport after all. We're not robots. You're not going to go 9 for 9 every time. And even if you are, you probably aren't pushing yourself hard enough if that's always the case. The main takeaway from this is what I said earlier, that it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. I've often had the conversation with lifters who are trying to justify the heaviest possible opener. Oh, I know I can hit that lift, I know I'm never going to miss it. It doesn't matter. If it's not setting you up to have the easiest route possible to what you want to achieve, then it's not worth doing. If you end up working backwards from that range that you want, and you end up with an opener that you can do for 5-6 reps, something that just isn't even worth getting excited about, that's a good thing. You're just making life easier for yourself, you're building easy momentum into your second and third attempts, and you're setting yourself up to have the most successful day possible.